Hi there, welcome. Today I want to talk about being able to predict the future. Because if you can predict the future, you can position yourself for some pretty magnificent trends to help you make profit from that or all kinds of other awesome stuff. So please keep watching. I'm going to share some really amazing things with you today that will really help you in your business life. Okay, so excuse me, over the years, over the last decade or so, I've been a total nutcase when it comes to trying to predict the future and being able to spot trends before everyone else. Why? Well, if you can spot a trend before everyone else, it means you can position yourself in front of everyone else, in front of that wave coming, in the best possible way to take advantage of it from not just a business perspective, but from an overall bigger perspective with your life as well. But in particular for business, if you can spot trends before everyone else, and especially trends that will take off, you can really benefit from that in a really big way and profit from that in a really big way too. I've been able to do this now for about 5 times. Let me just see. I created an ebook back in 2006. I was doing podcasting in 2007. I was doing blogging we had a blogging course in 2008. I did the video marketing training already back in 2010. I released a course, but I was doing it way before then as well. And what's the fifth one? So video advertising, I've been able to spot that. And I think live video streaming is one that I've been able to do as well. So like 6 different big trends that I was able to spot before the mainstream was able to get on it. And I've been able to position myself for those things and to a certain degree take advantage of that. So today I'd like to share with you how to do that and the ideas and strategies that I use to be able to do that very effectively. So I want to share with you some resources first that's been able to inspire me and help me do this, and that you can also use to help get a lot more in-depth information on this. So the first one is this one called The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell. It's all about how stuff go viral, really, and how things go big in a really big way. So some really cool ideas in this book to help you with that. And by the way, all the links for these books and stuff that I'm talking about today is in the description area below this video, so make sure you check that out. Okay, The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell. The other one is The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, and I talked about this a while ago, but this relates to cycles, and I'm going to talk to you about that. So not so much storytelling in terms of prediction stuff, but in terms of cycles, and when you can understand the cycles and how they work, that can help you tremendously. This one is sort of in line with that as well. Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, which is really the inspiration for Christopher Vogler's book. And then there's another one that has been super, super powerful. And I don't have a copy with me at the moment. Let me just see if I can show you guys that book as well. It's called, actually, let me get it up here on the screen for you guys to see. So it's called Crossing the Chasm. There we go. There it is. By Jeffrey Moore. And once again, all the links for these books are just below this video. Awesome resources here. Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. So I read this book, about 15 years ago. Actually, more than that. 20 years ago, maybe. Brilliant book. But anyway, these are some of the books that's been able to inspire me and help formulate and structure my thinking to help me predict the future to a certain degree. I also used to do currency trading for a while, believe it or not. I did it for about a year, almost full time. It was crazy. And that allowed me to also look at trends and figuring out how to predict trends and how to predict what people are going to do next. So I'll be sharing that with you as well. So there's basically 3 ideas here that I can summarize from all this information that I use when I look at future trends. The first one I came across actually a long time ago when I did my Master of Engineering Management Studies. And it's all to do with, there's something called the S curve. S, the letter S for Superman, curve. And this is something that a lot of people use in their mathematical models to predict the future or to predict a certain growth for a certain new thing. And it looks like this. So the S curve is this one here. No, not that one. Here, okay. So in terms of the S-curve, when you look at anything, any sort of new thing that is, about to go crazy and about to go, viral, it kind of looks like this. It has sort of the slow beginning, and then it tapers off towards the end there. So this is called the S-curve. And if you understand how this works, then you can to a very fairly high degree of accuracy predict what's going to happen in the future. Now, oftentimes the hardest part to figure out is when a new trend is right here at the beginning. But I'm going to share with you how to know, with a fairly good chance of accuracy, or how to know whether it's going to go into this big area of growth. Of course, this is over time here, and this is I guess growth here on this side. So the S-curve. Now, inside Malcolm Gladwell's book, he talks about some very interesting stuff. So he talks about, at one point, about some key people. He calls it the law of the few. And there's three kinds of people he mentions in the book. One is called a connector, one is called a maven, and one is called a salesman. So basically, you're saying whenever you see those people present, and those are the sort of people that can make something grow really big. And oftentimes you will find them already operating here. You'll have the mavens operating here, and the connectors sort of over here, and the salesman, I guess, here to really make things rocket up. And you get all these sort of people coming in at different points of a new trend to be able to make something grow big. Now, one big idea that I learned from Malcolm's book was that when you want to spot a new trend, you don't look at the mainstream. You don't look at what everyone else is doing. You look at a very small percentage of people who are sometimes they're called cool people, sometimes they're called freaks, sometimes they're called inventors, sometimes they're called innovators. Basically, the people who are non-conformists. They are non-conformists. They do not like being part of the mainstream. Kind of like, it's interesting how this hipster thing developed, right? At the beginning, we had the true hipsters, and they became hipsters because they didn't want to be the same as everyone else in the mainstream. So they started dressing really awkwardly with funny beards, funny hats, and all this sort of stuff. And, already when you're starting to look at these trends now, a lot of other people have become hipsters now as well. That trend has become a lot more accepted. And now those original hipsters, they've moved on now because it's not cool anymore for them. It's cool now for the mainstream, but for these hipsters, for these original guys, these non-conformists, they don't want to be the same as the mainstream. They want to be different, and they want to try out new things. They love new things. So one way to start spotting these trends, or to start getting a feel for any future potential trends coming up, is you find these non-conformists. And maybe normally it's like people that are quite rebellious by nature, and you look at what they're doing. What are they wearing? What are they talking about? Who are their friends? Who do they hang out with? What actions do they take? What products do they buy? And what's interesting about these people is that there's not as many of them around. So they're a bit more tricky to find. But when you spot them, they're very interesting to watch and very interesting to study and to learn from. So one way to do this is to become so entrenched in your industry. When you stay in an industry for long enough, you start figuring out all the players. You start figuring out who are the innovators, who are the early adopters, who are the early majority, all those sort of people. And then you can start sort of seeing these people and finding out who they are. And they pick the trends. They pick the trends before everyone else. And their trends don't always go off, but I'm going to share with you how you can figure that out as well. But what it allows you to do is say, okay, you can now, from these people, learn what are all the future potential trends that's going to hit in 2 or 3 years' time. Okay, so that's the first idea from Malcolm's book. So the second idea now for helping you figure out, whether a trend is actually going to take off, is to use the idea now from Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, this book here. And if I get this here, So this next idea relates to that. So Geoffrey Moore, he did some amazing work with helping high-tech startup companies to, go global, or go really viral, I guess. And so he discovered this thing as well. So it was sort of this S curve, but if you continue the S curve, this is like the product. It's called the product adoption life cycle. So this is now from crossing the chasm, right? Crossing the chasm. And what he discovered was that for a lot of high-tech companies, actually, let me just backstep this. For any product adoption lifecycle, you have these different people that come on board, and it looks like this. Over here, you've got the innovators. I was going to abbreviate this, I for innovators. Here you have the early adopters. Here you have the early majority. Here you have the late majority. Oops. The late majority. And here you've got the laggards. And this is very much in line with what Malcolm Gladwell talks about as well. So at the beginning here, you've got these awkward people, the rebellious people, the trendsetters, I guess, the people who do not want to conform. Those are your innovators and early adopters. So they operate here at the beginning. So what Geoffrey Moore found was that there's this gap here for a number of reasons. There's this gap here going from the early adopters and the innovators to the early majority. And this is what he called the chasm. And the thing is with this chasm is that this is where most companies would fall into and basically die and never recover again. But one massive lesson I got from this in terms of trend spotting was that these people here, I'm going to circle them in red, these people at the beginning cannot stand these people here. And vice versa, these people here cannot stand these people here. The early people in the early majority, they don't trust the innovators and the early adopters. The early majority people, they only engage in something or buy something when they see their peers, their friends, engage or buy something as well. Whereas the innovators and early adopters, they jump on it just because it's new and it's different. And the early majority, they don't like that. They don't like that. So that's one massively important thing that I learned from this. And so when you start thinking about this, now the picture will become clearer for you. So when you know this, it's critical that you understand this next thing. So what Geoffrey Moore showed in the Crossing the Chasm was that for any of these companies to be able to become successful, they would need something that was called a beachhead. And he just drew it in like that. And this beachhead would allow companies to jump this chasm into the early majority. And basically all this beachhead was basically a major player in the early majority that would have access to the market here, to the target market here in the early majority. So in other words, if this big player didn't exist, then there wouldn't be a beachhead, and these trends that were spotted here at the beginning would just kind of fall into the chasm. So one way to try and spot these trends that's going to take off and reach this early majority and late majority, because this is between these points here, this is where the majority of your market is, between these points. Here is a small part of your market, but here, this is where things go really viral and really big. But how do you know that it's going to jump into this big area? How do you know when or how that's going to happen? Well, this is where you look for the existence of these beachhead companies or organizations or individuals. And it can be anybody or any organization that has a big database or a big customer base or a big following of people who would be likely to jump on these potential trends. Okay, so that beachhead needs to be there, or needs to be a potential for these beachheads, for these trends to be able to take off. One example, I'll do this in blue. So Microsoft was here at the beginning, right? They were, at the beginning they would have had early adopters and innovators using their software, etc. But then they teamed up with IBM. Sorry, it's getting a little bit messy here, but IBM. as their beachhead. And guess what IBM had? IBM was exactly a player like this, where they already had computers where people using it. The target market that Bill Gates was after, IBM already had access to that audience. So all that Bill Gates had to do was basically impress IBM and say to IBM, hey, IBM, guess what? I've got some awesome software that you can put on your operating system, on your computers, and then it'll help you sell more computers. It'll make your customers happier. It'll create a much better experience for them, etc., etc. All IBM had to do was install it on their computers, and whenever they sold it to their customers, boom, Microsoft had access to this early majority and then the mainstream as a result. So this is what you do. You look, if you're trying to spot trends, you look for, you try and find the existence of these beachheads, or if there's maybe just one beachhead. And that can often help you look and identify trends that won't just necessarily fall into that chasm, but has the opportunity to go really big as well. When I look at things like this, so for example, live video streaming. This is a very classic, a very timely example right now. We have all sorts of companies that's been jumping up. We've had Meerkat. We started probably with YouTube Live, right? YouTube Live events, then Google Hangouts, then Meerkat, then Periscope, then Blab, then Facebook mentions, then I don't know what else. There's a ton of other things. And there's been other companies as well that's tried a live thing. Now, for a lot of them, they didn't have a good beachhead. So, for example, Meerkat, I don't see anybody talking about Meerkat anymore. So you used to be able to, I haven't used them for a while, but used to be able to go live on Meerkat, and then I think it notifies your Twitter followers or something. But then, of course, Twitter came out with Periscope. Now, Periscope's beachhead, which it is a beachhead, but it's a relatively small beachhead compared to, say, YouTube or Facebook. But Periscope compared to Meerkat had a beachhead because with Periscope, they could just access that existing audience on Twitter that already had access to the market. So they could jump that chasm right away. So when I heard that Periscope's coming out, it was like a no-brainer that would take off. Now, the big question is there an even bigger beachhead out there that could crush that beachhead for Periscope? And I really think there is potential for that. So I'm looking at YouTube and I'm looking at Facebook. These are two humongous beachheads for the live streaming thing to take off. Okay? So with YouTube, massive audience, massive infrastructure. With Facebook, massive audience, massive social. The infrastructure lacks a little bit, but they're catching up extremely fast. So in terms of live streaming going fully mainstream, it's just a matter of time. And my take on it is that the two biggest beachheads at the moment are YouTube and Facebook. So you can see this happening. You could see this happening years ago already. And so there's a few things that need to happen still. For YouTube, they need to get their mobile app out. Facebook needs to improve their infrastructure, but it's already taking off. So we're still at the beginning of the curve here. If we were to look at live video streaming, I think we're really still at the beginning, and I think it's about to take off in a really, really big way. Okay, so that's the second idea that I wanted to share with you, and that was from crossing the chasm more. And now the last idea I want to share with you is in terms of cycles and human psychology and human nature, and how that plays together with these trends that we see. From reading The Hero's Journey, I actually went through a course. It's called The Wealthy Mind. I'm trying to remember who were the creators of that. I'll try and link to that also in the comments area. But they come up with the 7 universal cycles of change, which I'm going to share with you guys in a second. And through this stuff, what you can notice is that everything always goes in cycles. And if you look at nature, there's cycles, right? Things go up, things go down. Things has a starting point, it goes in some sort of a circle, and it goes right to the beginning again. We have sowing, nurturing, reaping, resting. Sowing, nurturing, reaping, resting. In nature, that happens in nature as well. So these are things that just happens. And when you can understand where you are in the cycle, you can, with a fairly high degree of success, predict what the next stage is going to be in the cycle and where this stuff is going to go. Okay, so let me share this one with you, because this for me is the most interesting one and the most powerful one. And you can use this in the context of these bigger product adoption life cycle and S-curve sort of things to help you see these cycles. Okay, so with the hero's journey, actually I'm not going to talk much about the hero's journey, but if you want to get an understanding of this journey that we all go on, all heroes, all human beings, all organizations, we to a certain degree we go on this thing called the hero's journey. Let me just get the picture for you. Where is it now? It's not at the front of the book. Why not? I want to get this picture for you. Oh, here it is. So this hero's journey, that it starts off with the ordinary world, and then you go through that journey, of call to adventure, refusal of the call, meeting with a mentor, crossing the first threshold, etc. We all go through this at some point, and sometimes we skip things and we jump right back to the beginning. But the one that I found more useful is this one from the Wealthy Mind course that I learned. So I'm going to share the 7 universal cycles of change with you, but I do encourage you to check out the bigger course as well, and I'll link that to the below this video. So it looks like this, and these cycles just happen all the time and over forever. Oops, let's erase that. So I'm going to go black. So there's the cycle, right? And this is the 7 universal cycles of change. So it all starts here with creation. This is normally where it starts. You create something, and then it goes into a growth phase. And you can already start seeing this is really 2 S curves flipped and put together into a circle. If you take 2 S curves, it's kind of a circle. I won't go into the mathematics of that, but it's basically the same thing. Next, you get complexity to maturity. And then you get this thing called turbulence, and things become a little bit unstable. And then basically things just turn into chaos. And there's this thing called droppings off, where things change basically, droppings off. And then finally you get into this meditative state or dormancy. And it just keeps on going, goes in this sort of direction. Now, the power of knowing this is that, everything goes through these same cycles. It just keeps on going through it. And sometimes the different stages of the cycles vary in length. Sometimes the creation stage is very long, the growth stage might be short, or the creation stage is very short and the growth phase is very long, etc., etc. Or you might get this, you might go through this whole process and just get to this meditative state, and that's only like a really short stage. But the key point is knowing that these different stages exist in any cycle, and being able to pick out where you are in that cycle can give you a very good idea of what's going on and what's about to come up. So oftentimes, if I were to just draw this on like a product adoption life cycle graph here again, it's exactly this. It's exactly this. So there's your creation. There's your growth. What else do we have here? We've got growth, and then it gets maybe complex, etc. Turbulence. Maybe you start getting, you start getting some turbulence here, and then chaos ensues, and then things start dropping off. Dropping offs here. So you're dropping there, and what else? Then there's a meditative state, I guess. Meditate. And then back onto creation again. Okay, so this is how you can sort of predict these different phases in any cycle. And so when you combine all these sort of ideas together, and you're operating in an industry, and you start getting to know an industry really well, this is when you can start pinpointing these trends coming up. So those 3 things. I'm going to just summarize them again, and then I'll jump into Q&A. First of all, look at the trendsetters. Look at the rebellious folk, the non-conformers. See what they're doing. What are they talking about? What are they wearing? What are they buying? What are they selling? What are they doing? Look at those guys or girls, ladies, men. Because they will often be the trend setters. Not all the trends will take off that they jump on, but they're the people that you need to look at in terms of what is likely to be the future mainstream stuff. Okay. And depending on the trend, it might take years, for the mainstream to get there, or it might take weeks, So it depends a little bit on the industry. The second thing you look at is let me just go back again. The second thing was, this thing with crossing the chasm and looking for those beachheads. So if you can find the existence of a beachhead that you can just see, that beachhead's going to make this thing go crazy, you've got a very high chance of that trend taking off and getting into the mainstream. So that's the second thing you look at. And then the third thing you look at are these cycles. When you start understanding these cycles, and then it just keeps on going through the cycles all the time, you can figure out how all that works. And just in terms of cycles as well, just one more idea here that I think is very useful, if I can share this with you guys, is when you look at the stock market. This is just one quick idea here. Oftentimes, what we would do is, if you wanted to know if something's going up or down, you'd look at this. There'd be a trend like this, and this would be called an uptrend. And the way you figure this out is that there are higher highs. The highs keep on going higher, but also the lows are getting higher too. So this is an uptrend that people call. It seems sort of obvious, but when you get something like it goes high there and then low there, then sort of there's a lower high, but there's a higher low, and then it goes up again. At this point, you don't know yet if it's an uptrend. You want to have this confirmed at least 2 or 3 times before you know that it's an uptrend. And exactly the same, or just the opposite really, for a downtrend. You look for lower lows and lower highs. So there's our lower lows. Every time it's lower than the previous low, and also the highs become lower as well. So that's a downtrend. And once again, it has to be in this sort of sequence. The highs have to be lower every time, and the lows have to be lower as well. And then you've got a downtrend. So when you bring all these ideas together, it really helps you become much, much better at spotting, potential future trends, picking the ones that are going to take off, and then aligning yourself to be able to take massive advantage of that. All right, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful. It's a bit more of a bigger picture stuff, but when you get this stuff, it helps you put everything into perspective. It helps you work on the right things. If you work on something that's not going to take off, then you can waste a lot of time. So it allows you to work on the right things, the things that's going to pay off for you in the long term. And it's kind of like the 80-20 principle, right? You only focus on the top 20% of most important things, and it gives you 80% of the results. If you've enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share this around. On mobile, it's above the video over here. On desktop, it's just below the video. Share it on social networks, Facebook, Twitter. Share it on Skype, on email. If you like what I'm doing here, please share this around. And also make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get updated. I run these at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time during business days at the moment, whenever I can. So make sure you tune in for those as well. So we'll jump over now to the live Q&A session. So if you're not watching this live now, then make sure you come on live so that you can also join in on the live Q&A sessions. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.